I was just thinking about an example of the whole thing of when we see things, when we see life more simply, how practical it can turn out. And I don't know, if any of you have heard me tell this story before about one of the changes that happened after I started to learn about the principles with my parenting. But the big thing that changed for me was how I handled my son and food. So I have my Master of Public Health in nutrition. And so while I haven't done that work in a really long time, I fancy myself as having a lot of knowledge. And so I should do a good job feeding my son food. And I've been out of the field for a long time, and I never worked with kids. So a former nutrition intern of mine is actually a good friend of mine. Our kids are in school together, and she works in kids nutrition. So I got in touch with her like after I first started learning the principles, and I was like, it really ought to be easier. My kid is picky and blah, blah, blah. And I got some advice from her. And I started doing some things that she had, that she suggested, like it made some sense to me, right? And I tried to do them. But what was happening is that the sort of underlying thing that I always wanted for my son to understand is that he always knows what his body needs. Like there are practical things to know about food, but mostly like, when you're hungry, and then you eat, and then you stop when you're done, and then you move on to the next time. And it's pretty simple. And I wanted him to understand that, right? So it was never an issue for me. Like I would never tell my son to finish the food on his plate. I do not care if he leaves one bite, not for a second do I want him to think that it's a good idea that he needs to like eat the last bite. Now I might do that. It might look silly if I have one bite left. I will just eat it, but I didn't want to steer him away from that, right? So I was clear about that, but at the same time, I was trying to use these tools from my nutritionist friend. And all of a sudden, I saw that if I was putting certain kinds of food in front of my child and telling him he had to eat off the plate, and also telling him, what your body needs, that was a mixed message. I saw that if I was trying to show him, like, you really know what you need, that he ought to have the capacity, the ability to go get what he needs, right? So the technique I was using was put 4 things on the plate and always include at least 2 things your kid is going to eat, right? But, like, I think we've all had experience. Like my favorite example is watermelon. There are some like really hot days I'll be out at a pool and I could just eat half a watermelon, right? And that'll be just a whole meal. But as a kid, my parent wouldn't feed me a meal of watermelon. Like, you just wouldn't do that, right? So finally, it occurred to me that I was just sort of battling my ideas of, okay, you have to eat fruits and vegetables, and it needs to be a combination, and you need to make sure to get this and get that and drink enough water. And I wasn't like actively thinking about that, but I saw how I had made up some rules about what my son should have. And as soon as I saw that there was, basically my son was saying, Mom, I would really like it if we could have granola for dinner. Why can't we have granola for dinner? And that was like the very polite version. Most of the time it was like, I want granola. Can we have granola for dinner? He would have it every day for breakfast. But in my world, initially, it was a bad idea to have it twice a day. But then finally I saw that I didn't actually think it was that bad of an idea for him to have it twice a day. Like, what do I know, right? So where things got simple was that I finally saw that I was trying so hard to make things work and figure out the answer. And I saw enough about how I could really trust my son. And, honestly, I keep my house stocked with really healthy foods. I just don't put a bunch of junk in the house. So I just changed the rule with my son, and I got him involved and asked his opinion and all this. And I just said, hey, you know how we've talked about that, you always know what you need to eat and your body will tell you. And he's like, yeah. And I said, well, I was thinking, like, what if your body needs something that I don't put on your plate? And he says to me, Mom, I was wondering about that myself. He was so serious about it, like very sincere. And he was just 7 at the time. And so I said, well, I haven't, like, this is definitely a conversation, but I have an idea about how we can change what we've been doing with food, but I haven't made any decisions. So I want to know what you think. And so basically I told him, new rules, you can eat anything you want in the house. I'll still serve you food, except breakfast. He totally serves himself, but I'll still serve you food. But if you don't want what's on your plate, you can just go in the house and get something else. So he was thrilled with that idea. And the only new rules I made was, if you want something else, you have to fix it yourself. I'm happy to show you how to do it if you need any information. And you have to put your dishes in the dishwasher. If there's anything for the compost or leftovers or trash, he had to learn how to do all that, which was great. So he was like, yeah, I'll do that. I can, like, basically he's like, I can have granola every meal. I'll do whatever you say, Mom. So for about 3 months, he ate granola all the time. I cannot even tell you how practical that was in terms of simplicity. It was so much easier. There were no conversations at the table about, I don't want this food. Can I have granola? It was just so easy because he got to decide. And then eventually, because of course, he got tired of granola. I can't even remember the last time he ate it. The granola we have in the cupboard is probably stale. Now, this is 2 years ago, but I just saw how all I was doing was sort of making up some really horrible scenario about how the world would end and he would be eating granola when he was 72, or, probably I was thinking more about when he went to college and he was 19 and he'd be eating granola every day. And what had I done? Because I didn't teach him anything. And it's just none of it's true, And I remember, like, a whole year after we started on this journey, I remember realizing one day that we had gone an entire month and he hadn't eaten granola for dinner. And I was like, oh, I didn't say anything to him, I didn't point it out. But I just realized, like, that is super practical, that I didn't have to force any of that. He's way less picky. He eats a lot more variety. Now, when I fix food, he's more likely to try something that he's never seen before, just because he knows that he can have something, like, it's his choice. He's not forced to do anything. He can always go and have something else. And I even saw how sometimes I would fix something and I would think, oh, he's really going to like it. And he would go to, like, get something else, like get cereal or whatever. And I would think that meant even that he wasn't going to eat anything that I had fixed. But that wasn't true either. Because sometimes he'd eat half his bowl of cereal and then switch and eat what I had fixed him. And he really gets it, about how he knows what he needs. And so the way he's so different than I am, in that he goes through phases of time where, so granola was his thing for a while. And he really ate a lot of granola. And then seaweed. Roasted seaweed was his thing for a while. You could not run out of that stuff. I think it's disgusting, but he and my husband loved the stuff. And it was like 4 months, lunch and dinner, seaweed all the time. I couldn't pack his lunch for school without the stuff in it. And then now he's totally done with it. I mean, he hasn't eaten it in a year. And, but he'll just go to the next thing. Oh, then he's into trail mix, or, oh, I'm really into raw broccoli. He went through a raw broccoli phase where he would eat it all the time. And, like, I don't even eat that much raw broccoli. He ate a ton of it. And because I can see that, basically it looks to me like my insight about how we're all okay, and I really can't know for him what's best. I can guide him, make sure that he doesn't, get hit by a bus, whatever. But he really, he doesn't even need that help. like he knows so much. And all it took from me was having enough of an insight to trust that I could really allow that to be true, and for him to learn from that, which it's like the best teacher ever. That life is the best teacher. And that is incredibly practical for how much mental space I freed up for myself. So much space in my head and time in life too, just like because it's when your head is clearer, you do have more time in your day. Somehow that's really true. And so that looks to me to be like super practical in terms of keeping things simple.